Welcome, everyone. I'm Jim McDonough, your host for today's program and the Executive Director of Headstrong, a national-facing mental health treatment practice committed to healing the hidden wounds of war amongst veterans. It's our honor to have you with us for Meeting of the Mind, a series of discussions with influential leaders who themselves are committed to helping individuals find their way through life's journeys. Today's discussion focuses on mental health and preparedness of the human body, and in particular, the preparedness of the human mind to serve in our nation's armed forces. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to explore topics that contribute to the practice of how to best prepare the mind and, in turn, our bodies to deal with the realities of service in the armed forces during a time of war. The realities of which can include a great deal of physical, emotional, and mental stressors that can leave an indelible mark on the minds and bodies of those who serve. Certainly in our trade craft, we understand these challenges and work hard to repair the damage caused by military service, which for some includes antecedents like early childhood and sexual trauma, often exacerbated through military service. I'm pleased today that we're joined by Dr. Deepak Chopra, the world-renowned advocate for attaining perfect health and believer that one's mind controls everything the human body feels and perceives in life. Dr. Chopra, welcome.
Thank you, Colonel McDonough. It's an honor to be with you.
Thank you very much. Enjoying and looking forward to this discussion. To begin with, you argue that everything that happens in the mind and brain is physically represented elsewhere in the body, with mental states, thoughts, feelings, perceptions, and memories directly influencing physiology by means of neurotransmitters such as dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin. I would pair that understanding that within our nation's members of the armed forces, a healthy brain, a thinking soldier, if you will, we find that what drives a healthy soldier is in fact a healthy brain. A lot of attention is paid to mental fitness within the armed forces. Can you draw a few parallels for us as to how to keep a healthy brain paired with a healthy body?
Okay, first of all, Jim, let's be very clear on our terms. The body is what we call a physical entity, but we know the body as a perceptual activity. If you didn't have perceptual activity, you wouldn't know that you have a body. The body, moreover, is not a noun, it's a verb. It's constantly changing. You started this experience of life as a fertilized ovum, and you'll end with death. In between, the body will be changing all the time. So it's a verb, it's not a noun. The mind is defined as the flow of information and energy. That's how we define mind. Mind is embodied and relational. You can't have a mind without relationship. So, with relationship, the flow of energy and information that occurs in the ecosystem of bodies, that's what the mind is. And mind and body are two entities that are inseparable in a deeper domain that's called consciousness or spirit or awareness. Let's use awareness. Awareness knows itself as the mind when it is having thoughts and emotions. Awareness knows itself as the body when it's having perceptions. And the two are exactly the same entity, just like mass and energy are the same entity, or space and time are the same entity, or wave and particle are the same entity. Whatever happens in the mind is recorded in the brain, but also in all the cells of the body. Whatever happens in the body is recorded in the brain, but also in the mind, which is the mind is not a physical entity. And everything is happening in what we call awareness. So self-awareness is the highest intelligence for mental, physical, and social well-being. Self-awareness. Now, self-awareness includes awareness of the body, as in mindfulness practices, awareness of what's happening inside the body, as in some yogic practices, awareness of the breath, awareness of mental space, and then awareness of the web of relationship, and finally, awareness of that which is perceiving everything. This is the highest intelligence, And if we can harness this intelligence collectively, then we can hope not only for relief and cure of post traumatic stress disorders of all kinds, but actually the enjoyment of peace and love and compassion and equanimity and joy and healing. And this is the call of the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I appreciate you walking us through the definitions for a moment, because I've certainly found this to be true in my own life. That as I've walked through life, I've become more self-aware, and as you begin this renewed journey towards health, well-being, love, and emotion, I have found myself returning to understanding the awareness that my brain is telling me that what I'm witnessing, and I certainly have witnessed it in my own physical body. That when you feel poorly about your surroundings and your mind is trapped in certain things, your body tends to feel the same way. And it took me a long time myself to kind of achieve a level of self awareness where, as you say, I think one feeds the other quite nicely, and how you remain self-aware at all times around a healthy brain, I've found does contribute to just health and well-being in general. But it took me a long time to get here. Is that also your observation of many? Is that it takes us a while, and only through life experiences do we gain this insight?
Yes, except for a few spiritual geniuses. For most of us, it takes a crisis, and the crisis could be anything. It could be a grief experience, it could be sickness, it could be war, it could be violence, it could be something that goes back a long time. It's very interesting that you mentioned the neuropeptides, the molecules of emotion, oxytocin, dopamine, opiates, serotonin. What we're learning right now, which is very important, by the way, as we embark on this journey of healing, is more than 80 to approximately 90% of these molecules of emotion are not produced in the brain, they're produced in the gut. So your brain is not the only source or experience of mind. Your whole body is a mind. The whole body is a mind. The brain just happens to speak in English with an Indian accent usually, but otherwise the mind is in all the cells of the body. And gut health has becoming very important in mental health. So now we know that dysbiosis or inflammation of the gut genome can cause depression. And if you repair that gut microbiome with a diet that has maximum diversity of microbials, healthy microbials, probiotics, prebiotics, maximum diversity of plant based foods, you can actually correct that dysbiosis and it improves people's depression. So, diet is also a very fundamental factor in improving mental well being, as is sleep, as our mindfulness practices, as is social engagement. The three most common determinants of well being: number one, having meaning and purpose in your life; number two, um, having a daily practice of mindfulness or self awareness; and number three, social engagement, where we actually engage with each other in the spirit of empathy, compassion, love, and joy, and equanimity. Those are the three most important determinants of both physical and mental health, and also of longevity.
And I think you would argue that they all can be trained. That
Yes.
every aspect of this involves the ability to train oneself to practice along those three domains. Correct?
Yes, you can train yourself in the same way as you train to learn the piano or learn how to play tennis or learn mathematics. These are skills that anyone can learn with a normal nervous system and even with a damaged nervous system.
Well, that's certainly been the case as I referred to the services focus on creating mental fitness or mental readiness, and that a thinking soldier, I'll go back to my army, is in fact a good soldier. One, the idea that engaging one's brain before a lot of other things takes precedence, so the rest of the body can be put in motion. And certainly, my time in service has focused on mental fitness as being core to developing a degree of resilience to trauma and some of the things that enter in through military service and life in general. So I'll segue for a second because you talk about one's life purpose, and I've read a few of your books, but in the Seven Spiritual Laws of Success, you write about how to focus on one's life purpose and what we are here to give, and that phrase resonates with me. It has a great deal of meaning, and I think it has a lot of meaning for people who will view this throughout the course of the conversation, because I think it's part of a lot of us who have served, that I am here to give. And I think we'd all say, that we give of ourselves to others as selfless servants in the armed forces. I, for one, try to live by the second law, the law of giving and receiving daily. But I'm interested in your ideas about how this should apply to all of us daily. And could you talk about that for a moment?
Sure. You mentioned two very important things. One is mental fitness, which is, the core expertise of people in the military. They have to be mentally fit, ready in combat, and alert. And so they have developed the discipline of what we call focused awareness. Focused awareness. And at the same time, if I've had engagement with Navy SEALs and others that say that they're not only focused aware, but also very targeted in the moment to what they want to achieve. This is the readiness that can be used to have fitness in every area of life, whether it is physical well-being, mental well-being, emotional well-being. This is actually the prelude, what you just told us. Mental fitness as applied now to daily routine, as applied to restful sleep, as applied to managing stress in the moment, as applied to relationships in the moment, as applied to creativity and insight and intuition and imagination in the moment. So when we talk about service, which is what you are all about, it's the noblest of all professions. Service and meaning and purpose go together. Exactly, they're the same thing. If you ask yourself one question, how can I serve? And you just sit quietly listening to what your internal dialogue is saying. If you ask yourself, how can I serve? You will experience sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, imagination that will give you a clue to what I call PhD. Actually, that's something my colleague created. He said PhD, passion, hunger, and drive. What is your passion? What is your hunger for? What are you hungry for? What is your drive? If you had all the money in the world, all the time in the world, how would you express your unique talents, your unique skills, and who would benefit? That's how you find meaning and purpose. Once you find meaning and purpose, then you create context, relationships around the meaning or purpose. And meaning, context, relationships lead to a story, and that is what we call life. Life is a story built around meaning, context, purpose. So you have to ask yourself, if it helps, you create a soul profile for yourself to find your purpose. You ask, what's my purpose? What's my contribution? What are my peak experiences? Who are my heroes and heroines in history, mythology, religion? What are the qualities I look in a comrade? This is part of your training. What are the best qualities in your comrades? What do you give them? What do you receive from them? If you ask these questions, you build what is called a soul profile, which reflects your innermost values that you then put into service. And if you do that, you're going to not only enjoy good mental health, you're going to be physically fit as well, and you're going to enjoy longevity. Now we know that all this affects things like inflammation in the body. So today, all the research shows that only 5% of disease related gene mutations are fully penetrant, which means they guarantee the disease. 95% of all disease, chronic disease, is directly or indirectly linked to stress, anxiety, depression, or inflammation in the body. And we can all address this in a very practical way by addressing the meaning, context, purpose, relevance of our service to humanity and to each other.
Yeah, I find this um, a fascinating moment to have this conversation with you because, in terms of becoming more self-aware, I learned late in my military career that this idea of being a selfless servant is actually rewarded in military service. Meaning, the more selfless you are, the more giving you are of yourself to others, then the more the culture of the armed forces rewards that. It rewards you through promotion, through increased responsibility. What I and this is my self awareness hat for a second. What I didn't realize is that as much as I put into military service, um, I wasn't putting enough into my personal relationships, and it was almost as if one came at the expense of the other. And I'm wondering how you achieve a better point of balance in your mind, and it must be through self awareness earlier, which I wish I was, where this balance between the noblest form of service being what we're talking about, service to one's country, but at what price and how do you balance that in maintaining healthy relationships with family, friends, and others? Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, the same principles apply in personal relationship as apply in professional relationships and ultimately in your service to the world. I call these the 4 A's. Attention, which means deep listening, listening with the mind, listening with the heart, ultimately listening with the soul in deep stillness. Listening, number one, to yourself, but also to those that you care, those that are in your circuit of relationship. So that's the first A, attention. The second A is affection. It means you let the other person know that you care about them, that you love them, that you hold their back. Comrades in the army do that all the time. So that's the second, affection. The third is appreciation. Appreciation means noticing the special skills and talents of the other person and authentically acknowledging them, because you're good at certain things, I'm good at certain things, and we complement each other. That's what a good team is in an army, right? Everybody has shared vision, they complement each other's strengths, and they're also emotionally connected. Otherwise, there's no team. So, attention, affection, appreciation, and the last is acceptance. You don't try to change the other person. It's hard enough for you to change yourself. So, try giving up on changing others. You have to be the change you want to see in the world. So, attention, affection, appreciation, and acceptance are the key no matter what the relationship is. Of course, in personal relationships, are conditional. They're conditional because you both have, in a personal romantic family relationship, there's certain conditions you have to observe, which is how you manage that relationship. But when it comes to a higher cause, it's unconditional. There's no compromise whatsoever. It's unconditional. It's authenticity, integrity, higher cause, and total devotion.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much for walking through that. It's so helpful. Can you think of another profession that demands so much from one person? Can you think of other professions similarly situated?
I think a profession that comes close is my profession, the healing
Get it?
profession, doctors, frontline workers, firefighters, emergency room doctors, nurses. All these people are engaged in in helping and serving in the same way as you are. And right now, they're putting themselves into precarious and dangerous positions with this pandemic as well. That's an example of great service similar to the military.
Well, speaking of which, I'm gonna pivot for a second and talk about the global public health crisis with you for a moment. You're a big proponent of integrative medicine, and I'm wondering how the global public health crisis associated with COVID-19 is impacting what you would call your practice. And I've come across a couple of things in your care for veterans on how telemental health is becoming a norm. So what does it look like from your practice? How has this disrupted how you've practiced, and what should we be learning from this moment around integrative medicine?
So, as the pandemic started and a couple of months into it, I realized we were having three pandemics. One is the COVID-19 pandemic, the second is the financial crisis as a result of that, and the third is the stress that is accompanying that. And they're all equally important. And if you don't address the stress element of it, then actually the pandemic gets worse. People who get the infection, they succumb to inflammation if you're not managing stress. So we decided at our foundation, the Chopra Foundation, to create a global network which would democratize mental health and mental well-being. So as part of the Chopra Foundation, we have an initiative called neveralone.love, www.neveralone.love. That's our website. We also created an artificial intelligence chatbot. Her name is Peewee. She can engage with anyone in the world, and within a few seconds, she knows if you're at risk for mental distress or depression or suicide. In fact, she has already intervened in like 500 high risk cases that would probably have gone in the direction of suicide. So what we've done now is we're creating a blockchain and a cryptocurrency called Love in Action. So we can actually help anyone in the world who's facing distress, create an ecosystem with the four A's: attention, affection, appreciation, acceptance, but also a course around it called Freedom from Suffering. And the course has the following elements. The first element is, how do we become emotionally free ourselves? The second is, how do we consciously communicate with each other? The third is a 7-part course called The Path to Love and The Path to Peace. And the fourth is The Path to Spiritual Freedom. And we are putting this online. We would love to engage with you, and we would love to also engage with your organization. We are already involved with the Veterans Administration and many other such groups. And the more collaborative we can be, the better we will serve humanity. The old paradigm was competition. The new paradigm is we have to come together. All the information networks have to come together, harness our collective creativity, have shared vision, emotional and spiritual bonding, complement each other's strengths, reach a critical mass. And if we do this for ourselves, not only we will be healthier, but we have a chance of creating a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world for everyone.
You're certainly speaking our philosophy towards caring for everyone we're responsible for, and this holistic pattern. It entails a great deal of altruism, and moving away from competitiveness. And I've been in this business a little bit, and I have found altruism to be in short supply. And I'm wondering what is your approach to diffusing such a grand scheme? Because I'm trying to do the same thing. We're trying to do the same thing, where it's not, you're concerned about the organization next to you and adjacent to you, because someone who comes in contact with us may be better served by them. Yet the financial models, the mechanisms by which we connect individuals to services, resources, and care, they're so terribly under equipped to do what we're talking about. So this is a huge change management kind of way of thinking. And I know we happen to agree with you. So, where do you think you will be in 2025? I know where Headstrong would like to be. We'd like to be more dispersed across this country and create greater access to high quality mental health treatment modalities. How long a horizon are you giving yourself to achieve this vision?
I say we should be focused now. Of course, have SMART goals. SMART is an acronym. SMART says stretch more than you can reach, measure everything, make sure your team agrees with you, and record your progress and set a time limit. So 2025 is great. But what we're trying to do is, because altruism is such a complex idea that people are scared of it, what we do is understand altruism and its relevance in what we call the social science of happiness. So today, social scientists are talking about what they call happiness formula. And the happiness formula says there are three components to happiness. One is the set point in your brain. Set point in your brain. Are you seeing an opportunity or are you seeing a crisis? People who are happy see opportunities. People who are unhappy see problems. The second part of the set point is financial resources. We all need financial resources, and we are discovering that if information networks collaborative, uh, collaboratively create a new paradigm, then finance comes. There are trillions of dollars available out there if there is cooperation now instead of competition. And the last part is, so that's the second part of the happiness formula, conditions of living. The third part of the happiness formula is what we call voluntary choices. So there are two kinds of choices people make every day. One for personal pleasure, like shopping, alcohol, entertainment, sex, and so on, which make people happy transiently. But there's another choice that makes them happy permanently, and that's called choice for relevance and meaning and purpose. And the fastest way to make that choice is to make somebody else happy. The fastest way to be happy right now, instantly, call somebody and make them happy, and you'll feel happy. That's altruism. You make other people happy so you can be happy.
I love it. Thank you for that. So, I've got a couple of more observations and points I'd like to make with you, and then we'll close this out. One is you began your medical residency in the Department of Veterans Affairs. So you came across people like me, and here you are in 2020 in the middle of this global public health crisis, somewhat returning to where you began with some of your initiatives. Can you talk to us about how you arrived here, and less so about the points in between? But I'm very intrigued by your beginnings with people like me, and now you're giving back to people like me. Where did that come from after that beginning?
So when I came to this country in the 70s, I trained in various hospitals in Boston, Harvard, BU, Tufts. But then I served as the chief resident of medicine at the Boston Veterans Administration Hospital. And I got very, very, very intimate with all the workings of the VA system. And at that time in the 70s, most of my patients were Vietnam War veterans. And, we talk about the suffering that's happening right now amongst the veterans. It was as bad then, when the Vietnam vets were coming back. And, I was privileged not only to serve them, but I owe them my education. My education, medical education, came from the Veterans Administration. So I have deep gratitude for them. And I now feel it's my time to give back a little bit. And so I find this a great privilege to return to what I call home base.
That's wonderful, and we thank you for doing so. And we're glad we had a little bit of a role in your life in training you to be the clinician and the human being you are today. And I'm humbled by that idea. I know this country trains a lot of our healthcare professionals within the Department of Veterans Affairs. And it's one reason why it exists as it exists today, as a training ground for future doctors and healthcare professionals. So really appreciate you giving back at this moment as well. So, one final observation. You often state your mind, your body, and your consciousness, which is your spirit, and your social interactions, your personal relationships, your environment, how you deal with the environment, and your biology are all inextricably woven into a single process. By influencing one, you influence everything. And here's my final question of you. How do we best influence the one to influence everything?
So, the definition of health, healing, is wholeness. Health, healing, wholeness. And holy are the same word. Health, healing, wholeness, and holy, sacred. Healing is a return to the memory of wholeness. That means nothing is excluded, nothing is excluded. There's no sinner, there's no saint, there's nothing divine, diabolical. There's only infinite being expressing itself with maximum diversity. So, once we accept that, there is profound peace, and meditation takes you to the source of all experience, which is thought, sensations, images, feelings, imaginations, and all these interactions. A quiet mind, therefore, is the prelude to the return of holy. Not a positive mind, because positive mind can be a turbulent mind. You're always trying to be positive. That can create stress. But a quiet mind is a healing mind. So my idea of return to wholeness is we all have a quiet mind. And when we have a quiet mind, we have insight, we have intuition, we have imagination, we have creativity, we have a higher vision, we have a calling, and then we go for it. It's called love in action, because love without action is irrelevant, and action without love is meaningless. When you have love in action, you return to wholeness.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Chopra. This has been a thrill for me to have the opportunity to speak with you. And I want to thank you for giving so much today. I'll close with a simple observation. Here at Headstrong, we believe that it is only through becoming vulnerable that we are able to begin the process of healing. We also recognize that engaging leaders like you is integral to refining and growing our own processes and work in this realm. I thank you for your openness and your generosity. We very much appreciate your participation in our Meeting of the Minds series, and we look forward to working with you and wish you all the best. And I'll save the last word for you.
Well, it'll be a privilege to work with you, an honor, and I'm humbled that we have this conversation, that we can work together. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Dr. Chopra.